Do you think bottle feeding is only a survival mechanism for babies? There's a lot more to it than just bottle feeding and survival. Here are 7 different potential bottle feeding mistakes that you could be making with your baby that can be pretty detrimental overall when they get older. I'm Adriana. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist who specializes in feeding. So today I will be talking to you about the long-term effects. Let's go ahead and talk about these long-term issues that can be affected by these 7 potential mistakes that we can be making when it comes to newborn bottle feeding and even baby bottle feeding in general. So if we're not responsibly reading our baby's cues during bottle feeding, here are things that can potentially happen. Picky eating is one thing that I end up noticing, and the other thing is the baby could potentially have an overweight issue as they get older because they don't know when they are full or when they are not full, especially when we're pushing bottle feeding. Relationship with feeding is also impacted as well, because if someone is constantly pushing the baby to feed, then that's when they'll end up having issues when it comes to wanting to feed or not to feed. Also having a pretty bad connection when it comes to the caregiver who is bottle feeding, and also having not the best relationship when it comes to food or even bottle feeding with that particular caregiver. Babies are smart, so here are the 7 different mistakes that we could potentially be making, but this is why these are the different long-term issues that can have a long-term effect on your baby. So as mentioned before, number 1 is not paying attention to your baby's cues. So this means that the baby is arching back, really trying to tell you that they're really not hungry, they're blinking, they're staring at you intently, or they're trying to pull away from the bottle and you're constantly wanting to put that nipple in their mouth just to drink a little bit more extra, just so they could sleep a little bit longer at night, or just so they can have the same amount of volume as they did the previous feeding. So these are different things that we need to understand, that if the baby is gaining weight, the baby is doing really well when it comes to their overall volume, and the pediatrician is not even concerned when it comes to the weight issue or even just the amount of volume. Let's go ahead and respect those cues and not try and consistently push that extra volume into the baby's mouth. There could be other issues in terms of why they're wanting to pull away from the bottle, why they're not really enjoying that particular feeding, and a lot of it can potentially be the nipple flow rate or even the positioning of the baby as well. I do have a video on the nipple flows in terms of like, should we switch to a higher flow? Should we maintain it the same? Is the nipple too fast? These are different types of cues that the baby is trying to tell you during the feed. Number 2 is dream feeding. So dream feeding can be literally a video on its own. But dream feeding is basically when the baby is very exhausted, very, very tired, and they are literally falling asleep, and that's the only way you could push extra volume in your baby. And this can be pretty detrimental overall, because the baby, as they get older, they start realizing, wait a second, this is not my suck reflex anymore. Sucking reflex starts integrating or going away by 3 to 4 months. And they start realizing that they're not wanting to eat. So then this is the stage, and this is the age that they start refusing to eat while they're dream feeding, or more so exhausted and tired and eating at the same time. Typically this happens mostly at night when they're just really exhausted and tired and they can't really fight the nipple and not want to eat. But as long as we're respecting those cues, especially at night, and we're not having the baby dream feed, you will notice a huge difference as you start respecting more and more of those cues, and they'll start respecting you as the caregiver and also wanting to bottle feed. Number 3 is tapping the bottle. I have seen multiple parents that end up wanting to wake up the baby and they're just constantly tapping on the nipple just to get that extra little volume in them, or to wake them up, which actually leads me to number 4. Number 4 is when we're also twisting the bottle in their mouth. Again, It really disrupts the latch, first of all, and second of all, it's going to cause a lot of dripping and spillage of the baby because they're unable to latch. It's basically, even when you're trying to suck on a straw and like literally someone is twisting that straw in your mouth, you're unable to maintain that latch and to maintain that suction. So you're basically disrupting that suck, swallow, breathe pattern in the baby. So let's try not to do that, because we're also trying to force the baby to eat a little bit more, and then also we're disrupting that oral motor pattern in order for the baby to eat more efficiently. Number 5 is not giving a break when the baby is asking for a break. So for example, if the baby needs to burp, if the baby needs literally a breath break, in order for them to be able to just kind of get it together and relax. And then also, okay, once we go ahead and get that air out of their system, or give them a little bit of that break, even if they don't burp, at least it gives them an opportunity to kind of breathe and then get back into the feeding. Feeding is an actual exercise for baby. Babies really work hard when it comes to that suck, swallow, breathing coordination. So we have to remember that breathing is literally pretty tiring, especially if the baby is really sucking pretty hard, or if you're noticing that the baby isn't really efficient when it comes to their latch. So that's definitely something to kind of consider and really realize overall if the baby really needs a break, especially a burp break. Now, not all babies need burp breaks. Some babies love the fact that they get to go ahead and feed the entire volume and really enjoy the feeding. As long as the baby doesn't have major reflux or anything like that, where the air is really going to be disruptive at the very end of the feeding, then it's totally fine. Because I know other moms and dads that have mentioned where, you know, my baby ends up getting mad when I take out the bottle to give them the break. But this is mostly for babies that really don't need that particular break. Then go ahead and bottle feed your baby. Totally fine, as long as they don't have major spit up or major issues at the end of the feed, then it's totally fine, because a lot of air can cause that colic and that extra volume, and they can end up throwing up a lot. So just something to consider. Number 6 is forcing that extra volume in the baby. I know that I'm gonna be contradicting myself when it comes to the NICU. The NICU loves numbers. Been there, done that. I understand exactly where nurses come from, where neonatologists come from, where even occupational physical therapists and speech pathologists come from when it comes to working in the NICU. So aside from that, when babies go home, even NICU babies, it is important to not force so much the volume in the baby. It's understandable if the baby is somewhat sleepy, they have jaundice, or they were preemies, as I've mentioned before, and then you go ahead and place them down, and then they re-arouse, they wake up, because sometimes they end up falling asleep when it comes to bottle feeding or even breastfeeding, and then they end up getting very comfortable and cozy with the parents and the family. So again, if we end up placing them back in the crib or back on whatever surface that you placed your baby on, and then if they end up waking up and really wanting to root or really wanting to feed, then go ahead and feed the rest of the volume. But I wouldn't really spend a ton of time to be really waking up the baby, forcing the baby to really wake up, that kind of thing, to get that extra 10 cc's in, right? Or 10 milliliters into the baby overall. Just try and wait till the next feeding and see if they could take that extra little volume that they didn't end up bottle feeding, and maybe they'll have a lot more energy, because again, we're re-arousing that baby, we're really waking that baby up, and then we're just kind of exhausting them overall when it comes to bottle feeding. So let's just not force that extra volume into the little one. Again, it's also very important to not get that extra volume in, because they end up sleeping a little bit longer and so on and so forth. Let's just respect those cues. Eventually these little ones will end up going to sleep on their own, and they'll end up wanting to sleep eventually. Again, it could take up to 9 to 10 months when they're 9 to 10 months old to be able to fully sleep throughout the entire night. Even up to 12 months of age. So it takes a while. Trust me, been there, done that, and it's definitely not fun, but it's very typical for babies when it comes to sleep. But other than that, let's just not force that extra volume and let's respect those cues. And number 7 is always using that cradle position. Now, this is something that everyone, I wouldn't say everyone, I feel like every parent always thinks that we need to graduate to that cradle position just like this and bottle feed the baby in this cradle position no matter what, you know, because my baby is not normal if we're putting them in this sideline position. It's just, no, it's totally not, it's not okay. We can put babies in different positions. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with your baby if you need to put them in a sideline position. It doesn't necessarily mean that if the baby needs a little bit more of that upright position, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. So if your baby needs that sideline position, just like a breastfeeding baby, it's totally fine. Again, that sideline position, it gives the baby time to swallow. The baby is able to self-pace themselves. We don't even have to pace the bottle at times when it comes to bottle feeding. The baby can self-pace, self-regulate, and actually enjoy the feeding even in this sideline position. And elevated sideline position is a wonderful position. And this is definitely a video that I am also including as well. So check it out, it's right here. That way you guys could look at these different positions that I'm talking to you about. But that cradle position is not the ultimate position. It's not the graduating position for all babies. There are other positions and there's other ways that we can bottle feed a baby so they are happy and content, and we are respecting these cues. These are all the different things that we can potentially be doing to you know, disrupt the feeding. And as mentioned before, it's really important that we are paying attention to our babies, and babies are really, really smart little ones. And let's just respect them. And also, I mean, I totally get it in terms of, you know, feeding is a survival mechanism, but at the same time, babies deserve the right to feel good in their bodies. Babies deserve the right to be respected, and babies deserve the right to also enjoy feedings. Just like I wouldn't feel comfortable also as a caregiver to really force the baby to feed, at least that it comes from my end. Obviously I'm a pediatric therapist and specializing in feeding, so it's really important to make sure that we are respecting these cues and we're respecting the baby overall. There are those long-term effects that I have mentioned at the very beginning of this video. So let me know if you guys have any questions or if there's anything else that you guys want me to talk about. So let's go ahead and check out this other video that I have when it comes to the bottle flow and the bottle flow rates. So in case you guys have any questions about that, check out that video that I attach here next. Thanks and have a good day.